Is it too much to ask to just go one singular week without having to break some Red Sox injury news? What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to Red Seat Radio. My name is Corbin, and the Red Sox injury list continues to grow. Garrett Whitlock is now added to the IL along with Adam Duvall, Trevor Story, Adalberto Mondesi, Chris Martin, James Paxton, and more. This Red Sox injury list is getting super long, and this injury in particular is a bit of a rough one, especially with the state of the Red Sox rotation right now. So what we're going to do in today's video is we're going to break down Garrett Whitlock's latest injury. We're going to talk about what happened. We're going to talk about the injury itself. We're going to talk about recovery time, how losing Garrett Whitlock is going to affect this Red Sox team, and we're going to talk about what the Red Sox are going to do to replace Garrett Whitlock in this Red Sox rotation. But before we get into that, do me a favor, make sure you guys have hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. If you're new here, we talk Red Sox content almost every single day. Also, make sure you guys have hit the like button on this video as well. Helps these videos out a ton, and it would mean a lot to me. Thank you all very much for clicking on this one. Let's get into it. Okay, so as always, let's start by breaking down Garrett Whitlock's injury itself before we get into how it's going to affect this Red Sox team. It was announced that Garrett Whitlock was going to be placed on the 15-day IL retroactive to April 25th. Basically, what that means is his 15-day IL stint does not start today. It started on the 25th of April, and he was placed on the IL because of right elbow ulnar neuritis. Now, that is basically inflammation or irritation of the nerve on the inside of the right elbow. Basically, what that does is it causes pain, it causes numbness, and it causes tingling throughout the arm as well as the hand. So not exactly great news. As for the timeline on an injury like this, he was placed on the 15-day IL, and there is reason to believe that it's only going to take 15 days for him to get back into this Red Sox rotation after maybe one or two rehab assignments. However, after some quick research, the timetable on this injury could vary a lot. There are a lot of cases where it is just sort of a quick fix. You just sort of lay off of it for a little bit and it goes away within a couple of days, but it could also be up to 6 months that we're talking about Garrett Whitlock still having tingling or numbness in his hand, which would make it pretty dang hard to throw a baseball at a major league level. So this could be a longer injury, could be a shorter injury, but either way, it looks like Garrett Whitlock is going to be spending some significant time on the injured list. Hopefully, this is sort of like the Chris Martin situation where he had shoulder inflammation. He was placed on the 15-day IL list, and he is already on a rehab assignment in Worcester, and he should be added back onto this Red Sox team and in this Red Sox bullpen within the next week or so. So I'm going to stay positive here until we have news that it's not positive and assume that Garrett Whitlock will only be out of this Red Sox rotation for 15 days. But either way, it's going to be a hit to this Red Sox rotation. Now, Garrett Whitlock wasn't exactly lighting the world on fire so far this year with an ERA of 6.19, a 5.98 FIP, and a 77 ERA plus, but he did show signs of greatness during those first 3 starts of the year, specifically that Angels start, which was probably the third or second best start by a Red Sox pitcher all season long. At the same time, too, Garrett Whitlock at the time of his injury was the guy in this rotation with the highest ceiling. Now, you could also include maybe Chris Sale in that if he can figure out his mechanical stuff, and you could also kind of include Tanner Houck in that as well, who's been your most solid and consistent pitcher all year. But out of the 3 of those, Garrett Whitlock was definitely the guy who had the highest ceiling at that point, and it's going to definitely still be a hit on this Red Sox team who has had struggles being consistent so far this year. And while Garrett Whitlock was not immune to those struggles and did have some tough starts on his own, you could see sort of what a larger sample size of Garrett Whitlock could look like if he settled down and figured out his mechanics on the mound, especially when he was relying on that slider. He actually looked like a really great pitcher, a really solid, maybe 2, probably 3 rotation type guy before he went down. So yes, this is going to be a hit to the rotation, regardless of the fact that Garrett Whitlock was off to a bit of a slow start this year. There was a lot of hopes going into the season that he was going to develop into a great major league starter. Again, a 2 or 3 type starter. So this is not going to be the end of Garrett Whitlock's season, but it is going to put a hold on Garrett Whitlock becoming a true starter at the major league level, which again is going to be a problem for this Red Sox rotation. But at the same time too, the good news is the Red Sox over this offseason prioritized depth in the rotation, so they do have options available, and it looks like the Red Sox already did make a decision as to who is going to replace Garrett Whitlock in this rotation. In my opinion, it's a great one. So let's talk about it. The roster move the Red Sox had to make to replace Garrett Whitlock is actually one I think most people will be happy about, at least in terms of who's getting replaced. Obviously not Garrett Whitlock going down. I don't think anyone's happy about that, but who they replaced him with, at least in my opinion, makes the most sense, and that is that the Red Sox have recalled Brayan Bello from AAA Worcester, so it looks like Brayan Bello is going to get another shot in this Red Sox rotation, and this makes perfect sense to me, right? This is no surprise at all. Obviously, you're going to call up the prospect with the highest ceiling in terms of pitching back into this Red Sox rotation to replace Garrett Whitlock. Now, Brayan Bello's last start for the Boston Red Sox and in general came on April 23rd against the Brewers, where he went 4 2/3 innings. He allowed just 3 earned runs, struck out 3, and walked 2. Honestly, he looked fairly good during that start. It wasn't anything super impressive, but you could tell he was settling down a little bit, and it was a stark difference between that start and his first start of the year against the Angels. The reason I bring this up is because Garrett Whitlock was actually scheduled to make his start against the Cleveland Guardians tomorrow on Saturday. So Brayan Bello's getting thrown kind of right into the fire here. He has enough rest. He's plenty rested, honestly, and he's going up against the Cleveland Guardians tomorrow. So I just wanted to give you guys a heads up on that. Now, I'm not going to go into a ton of detail as to what Brayan Bello could do and what he could accomplish in this Red Sox rotation, because I think all of you guys already know exactly how big of a prospect Brayan Bello is and what he can do at the major league level. And honestly, I'm pretty excited to see him back in this major league rotation. When he first went down to AAA, I was a little bit shocked. I thought Brayan Bello had figured out everything he needed to figure out at the minor league level, and now he just sort of needed to work on becoming an effective everyday major league starter. So I'm excited to see him back in this rotation at the very least. If there is any silver lining to this Garrett Whitlock injury, it's that Brayan Bello is back. But obviously, it would have been nice to have both of those guys in the rotation with the ceilings that they have. My biggest question in all of this is, what do you do when Garrett Whitlock does come back? If it is just a 15-day IL stint, what do you do with Brayan Bello? It wouldn't make a ton of sense to me to start ping-ponging him back to AAA Worcester every couple of months and just have him fill in for injured players. To me, I don't think that'd be the greatest idea for Brayan Bello's development. Then you got to add in James Paxton into that list as well. What do you do when he's ready and fully healthy and good to go, right? Do you put him in the bullpen? Do you put him in the rotation? Either way, the Red Sox have a ton of really important and interesting decisions to make regarding this rotation over the next couple of weeks, depending on when Garrett Whitlock and James Paxton get healthy. And honestly, it's going to be a tough one to make, so that'll be an interesting call as well. But to me, you just simply can't have Brayan Bello ping-ponging back and forth up and down from AAA Worcester to the big leagues. I think that'll kind of hurt his development in a way, and I really don't love that idea. At the end of the day, obviously this sucks for Garrett Whitlock. He was injured last year. He's a guy who kind of gets injured a pretty decent amount, and he's a guy who I think a lot of people were looking forward to seeing in this Red Sox rotation in 2023. And again, he's probably not going to miss a ton of time. My guess is this will hopefully be less than a month on the IL, and he still will have time to prove himself at the major league level because he deserves to prove himself as a starting pitcher. At the very least, the Red Sox deserve to know whether or not he is a starting pitcher at the major league level or he's a bullpen weapon, right? This was supposed to be the season to see that, and hopefully we do get to see that at some point. This is just a pause. And again, I'm happy we get Brayan Bello back at the major league level at least. Again, that's sort of the silver lining here in all of this. Let me know in the comment section down below, what do you think of this Garrett Whitlock injury? What do you think of them calling up Brayan Bello? What do you think of Garrett Whitlock's timetable to come back? And how do you think this is going to affect this rotation? Let me know all your thoughts on Garrett Whitlock and the latest Red Sox injury in the comment section down below. As always, if you made it to the end of this video, do me a favor, make sure you guys have hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. If you're new here, we talk Red Sox content almost every single day. Also, make sure you guys have hit the like button on this video as well. Helps these videos out a ton, and it would mean a lot to me. Thank you all very much for clicking on this one, and I will see you, hopefully not with another injury video, and in the red seats.